Hey creatives, and welcome to another video. So Hunter's audiobook is already out. I'm doing the launch party for it this Friday. I'm so excited. It's going to be in my fan group. I'll have a link in the description below. I really hope you join me. We're going to be playing bingo and fantasy book trivia, and I'm going to be posting videos all day. So just come in, pop in when you can. I'll be doing a live stream here on YouTube as well at 8 o'clock Central to celebrate. But today I have a very special video for you. I was able to contact the narrator of Hunter, Timothy McKean, and I did a very special interview with him, and we sat down and we talked. This is the first part of it. There's going to be a part 2 coming in September, I think, is when I'm going to release it, but I wanted to split it up so that you guys could enjoy the content and not because we talked for like 40 minutes. So I split it in half essentially. So I hope you guys enjoy this exclusive interview with the narrator of Hunter, Timothy McKean. He's an excellent narrator. He is fantastic. And so in this video, you'll get to know him a little bit, get to know his process, and the behind the scenes of making a audiobook from an actual professional narrator's perspective. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get into this. Okay, so first I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience as a narrator and how you got started narrating audiobooks, because I was really curious about that.
Yeah, so my name's Tim McKean. I'm the audiobook narrator for Hunter and some other Hunter companions coming up soon as well. But I've been narrating for about 10 years now. I have a background in music performance. You can see behind me, I'll get my head out of the way. There's my French horn back there. I was actually a French horn performance and education major in undergrad.
Wow.
And then through a long different, various pathways, all our lives take various pathways, became a music educator for a while, got into education technology and then to online learning. And then through all that ed tech kind of path, I came to realize that I enjoyed, like the intersection between those things is educational media production, right? And I was always an audiobook listener. I used to get tapes from the library. You could get boxes of tapes that would be like, for a 20-hour book, it would be like 40 tapes or something like that. But so I was always an audiobook listener. And then when I started learning some of the technology and when Audible came around, and then ACX came around kind of in the 2012, 2011 kind of time, I started realizing, hey, this is something I can do from home. I don't need to be a full-time actor just in LA. It's starting to branch out. And so that's when I started, experimenting, getting some training. I took courses with major narrators at the time and went to workshops and things like that. And then just slowly over time, I've gotten better and have built my list of accomplishments and completed books, and I'm really enjoying it, and it's a nice way to have a creative outlet. I'm sure that you have that kind of similar thing of just that enjoyment of creating something that is going to last, and that is bringing literature to other people. For as much as I enjoy listening to audiobooks and just books in general, reading stories, that there's so much power in stories, as you know.
Yeah, there really is. And that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about writing is just creating these stories and worlds, especially for me, like including my Christian faith and like spreading the message and like just giving people something to hold on to, because life can be difficult and sometimes you just need a good book to read, So I understand that. It's really interesting for me. I feel like I didn't realize how much ACX, especially like provided opportunities for people like you mentioned that, it allowed you to like realize that you could do it from home and like anybody could just be a narrator, and it just makes things so, accessible, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay, so another thing I was really curious about was your process for narrating Hunter and like the character voices, and like I really was interested in the behind the scenes of how that, like how did you choose, X character voice, and like how did you the process of it and all the behind the scenes stuff, so to speak.
Voicing characters is one of the harder parts of narrating, for sure. Grabbing this over here because this is one of my props. You sent me some great notes, which was great. And I went through and I kind of, I don't know if you can see the highlighting on this,
Yeah.
but I highlighted, who's on the good guys and who's on the bad guys. And, so I could kind of keep track, and I kept referring back to those notes as I got to different parts in the book. But like I said, that's for me, one of the harder parts. I don't have a background in acting like a lot of narrators do. And so that's one of the places that really pushes me to and challenges me. But it's a lot of fun, and you can find, like I said, you gave me some good notes about kind of their attitude. And it's really one of the things I've learned in my time narrating, that it's really about capturing the energy of the person, not so much like a cartoon voice where it has to be, the sound of their voice. But it's really about capturing the energy. What is their motivation? What's their intent? What's their emotion? Are they? So Avarella obviously is a female character. And so she is a little bit lighter in tone. But also this was a challenge because as a male narrator and having a female protagonist, usually you don't cast that way, right?
Yeah.
Usually if it's a usually if it's a female author and a female protagonist, then there's going to be a female narrator. But because this had such a mix, it made sense to do it this way as well. And the more you realize, I don't know, do we want to give like spoilers in this interview?
Not heavy spoilers, but we can talk about different parts of the story. So
right. Well, I don't think this is a big spoiler, but when you read the book, you do realize that Jared is the protagonist, right?
Yeah.
That the protagonist of any story is not just the main character, but it's the character who has a change, who has an arc, right? Avarella has a little bit of a character arc as development and her personality, because she starts motivated by one thing and then that slowly changes over time. But Jared has the bigger arc, right? Jared has the bigger change. He's going through quite some experiences. And so as I started realizing that, I'm like, oh, that's why it makes sense to have the male narrator and to do that. But yeah, you want to definitely give characters enough of a distinct voice that it's easy for the audience to listen to, right? And well, that's one of the things that I think separates audiobooks from like anime or cartoon narration, is that in cartoon narration, you're giving that character like a very specific voice, and you can all think of like the Mickey Mouse voice or the Donald Duck voice or the Bart Simpson voice. Those are very iconic voices that those voice actors have developed. In audiobooks, we don't necessarily have to go that extreme. And in fact, some narrators that do go that extreme, I don't think that's very listenable. This book is almost 10 hours long. And some things that are extreme or comic like that aren't easy to listen to for a long period of time, right?
Yeah.
So what we have to do is just making sure, they call it dialogue separation, right? That every character has enough difference that they're separated from the other characters in that scene. And sometimes if you are really like analytical and you compare, Hinda's voice in one scene to Hinda's voice in another, it might not always be the same because of who he's in a conversation with.
Yeah.
And you have to be, I have to be really careful about, like, if I give a villain like a deep husky voice and he talks like this, well, I can't give every villain that voice, because what happens if they come into conversation with each other now, right? And we do have a couple scenes where like Hinda and Novark are talking to each other, and they had very similar characters as far as their energy and their motivation and their attitudes. And so those were some of the harder scenes to voice, because now I have these two very similar people talking to each other. And then I have to make separation between them. So now we're listening for that nuance. So that's the fun too. It's like I said, that's the challenge. And it scares me every time, but it's also the most fun part too.
Yeah, I feel like you did such a good job as I was listening to it, because I don't know if you realize this, but I wrote Hunter a long time ago, kind of right after I got out of high school. And so I've edited it like 6, 7, 8 times, so I've read it repeatedly. It's kind of annoying to me at this point because I know
Right.
every beat. I've read it so many times, and so I'm listening to this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually like this story again, and it kind of brought the characters to life. And I really like, because I feel like Hunter, the challenge was the huge cast of characters, just because there's so many hunters, and they're not all like prominent or important, but they're just there. And I feel like because some of them, like you said earlier, not all villains have to have a deep husky voice. Obviously, I wanted that for Hinda because he's the main one, but some of them, like Bex, and I can't remember some of the other ones that had Kellark, I think, and Bex had a more lighthearted, kind of sarcastic tone to them. And I feel like it
Yeah.
was really creative to kind of set them apart because, like you said, there are interactions between some of the hunters, and I feel like it just really works. And then, of course, Jared and Avarella obviously had such amazing voices, and their dialogue between each other was so good because I could distinguish the voices between them. And I also really, really liked how you creatively thought of, okay, this is Avarella's regular voice, this is how she sounds, but then she's disguising herself as a man, so that tone has to change a little bit. And I feel like it worked so well, and you thought so deeply about it, and that's what I just loved and appreciated so much about it.
Well, I'm glad that worked so well, because that was scary. And
Yeah.
also, and if you notice, it faded away, right? We over exaggerated the. We talked a little bit earlier in the process, kind of made that Mulan comparison, right? This is a female character who is masquerading as a male warrior, right? So it has that same kind of Mulan vibe about it. And the voice actor in the Mulan movie, she did this very fake man voice, which was obviously very fake, right?
Yeah.
But it told the story, it made the purpose. And so I started in that area early in Avarella, but then it slowly faded away because I didn't want the voice getting in the way of the sincerity of the emotion.
Yeah.
And I think it worked. Obviously, for you it worked.
Yes, definitely.
because you only need to establish that intention at the beginning, and then and this is one of the things that's also different in other types of voice acting than with audiobooks. Everything that the audience needs is in the text, right? Because when they're reading the book, there's not extra information, there's not extra inflection or extra tone of voice to denote anger or curiosity or fear. That's something that's a layer that we add on when we create an audiobook. But everything is there, everything they need is there. So sometimes it's just our job to get out of the way. And that's a place where if you're doing too much of a character voice, or if you're doing too much, I've heard people that tried to lean in too far on an accent that just got in the way. And so it's a very fine line to walk of doing that dialogue separation and creating those characters, but not stealing the attention away from the text.
I feel like it works very well emotionally too for some of the deeper parts of Hunter as well. And it just, you convey the emotion that's needed, but it's not over the top or like overly dramatic or anything like that. So I feel like it works really well. So speaking of all the character voices and stuff, which one was your favorite to voice?
Well, obviously I was able to maybe connect most with Jared because he had the most to connect to, right? I liked Bex. Bex, just because I didn't have to worry about him being like sincere or authentic or anything. I guess I should say he was easy to voice because of that, right?
Yeah.
He just was Bex is like very shallow and very surface level. But he had that sarcastic kind of gritty voice. In my mind, I cast Christian Slater for Bex.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I do is I think of actors that I know, and if I can picture them and picture their attitude, then when I speak their lines, I can kind of conjure their voice, or adapt their attitude, adopt their attitude a little bit. So
that makes sense.
The Bex was Christian Slater in my head.
That's really
but
cool.
so he was fun in that way because it was easy, and he was just, you could be, when there are characters that are like that are kind of ancillary characters and kind of on the outside, then you can lean in a little bit and have them be a little bit more odd or a little bit more extreme in their voicing, right? What was the character's name? It started with an I, and he had like a Jamaican accent a little bit, right?
Iria, I think.
Iria.
Yeah.
And he's one of those like that, right? I could not have done Jared with the Jamaican accent for the whole book, and
Yeah.
been able to connect with him and be as sincere with him if I had to layer on that kind of accent. But we can take a character that just appears in like 2 or 3 scenes and give him like that fun little accent, or give him a fun voice, and to kind of broaden the scope of the sounds, but at the same time, the more main the character is, the more the character is going to sound like me, right? Because it has to be authentic. But the more ancillary a character, the more it can be fun.
That's really cool. So which one was more difficult?
Like I said, Novark and Hinda, that dialogue,
Right.
and then one of the things that's still hard for me, and even as I was listening back the other day, older women are hard for me, because as a male narrator, doing a female voice is one of those challenges, and I'm sure, and the same is true for female narrators doing male voices, right? It's always just a challenge to do that and to do it with authenticity. And I think I do it pretty well in most cases, because and what I do is instead of trying to go really high, instead of trying to go high in pitch and be like this, which I can do sometimes, again, for those little ancillary kind of characters, it's much more effective for me to just lighten the tone and be more kind of up in the top of my mouth and a little more breath, right? And so I can do that and have Averella's voice like this. And it's got a different texture to it, even though it's not necessarily higher in pitch. But then doing that for an older woman, it requires some different things. So you have to do the texture, and then you have to, for older, kind of maybe add a little scratch to it, or bring the pitch back down. And so Averella's mom had a few lines like right in the first chapter. And so those are always hard for me to, even as I'm listening back, I'm like, does that sound like a woman? But at the same time, it's that idea of character separation. Like, you just need to know which is Averell and which is her mom, and so like, it doesn't need to be a convincing voice on its own, because nothing exists out of context, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the hard. And then toward the end, when we started, I don't want to give too many things, but when we start adding more villains, like there's a head villain, and then there's one above that, and then there's one above that you didn't know, and then there's like I can't get more sinister than after I already did, with Novark and then Hinda, and then so then the challenge was, how do you get more evil, how do you get more sinister without going lower and gravelier, right? That's kind of the stock villain voice. And when you don't have that to go to, where do you go next, right? And where I go next is all the way back on the other extreme, like the smoothest, like a person that you would never expect was ever the villain, that kind of smooth and just monotone, but also very calm and very controlled, that kind of character. So
I feel like I feel like in some ways it's more menacing too. So in some cases, so it works.
Yeah, you kind of think of like a Shere Khan kind of character from the Jungle Book. That's like he was like the most evil in that book and the most dangerous, but he didn't have an aggressive sound, or at least I'm thinking probably of some Disney one. I don't know exactly what recording I'm thinking of, but it's that kind of character too, of just underlying danger, not overt danger, right?
Yeah. So you've obviously narrated a lot of audiobooks in your time and your experience. So what has been your favorite audiobook to narrate, like, ever? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I don't think I can have a favorite. No, I don't think I have a favorite. They can all be so different. I've done some that were just, should I say this? I've done some that were just duds, right? I've sold like 5 copies on Audible, and those kind of things that just didn't go anywhere. But one of the nice things about audio books and just acting in general, and probably similar with writing, is that you get to explore so many personalities, and you get to explore so many situations that I myself would never be in. I can express and kind of get into some of these evil, dangerous things when I'm not an evil, dangerous person. And I never explore those areas of my own emotions really in real life. But in books, you get to explore that, right? So I think that's to me the one of the fun things, and one of the things that makes an audiobook project fun is the range that you get to explore, the different people you get to be. I did a series for an author named Joe Clifford, where he's kind of it's a character that's trying to investigate the murder of his brother. But he's also he's not like a professional investigator at all. He's just a guy that, is kind of down on his luck all the time. He's almost a drunk, right, borderline alcoholic, but just kind of struggling. And I thought that was an interesting character, because it's not the stereotypical. I've done other, detective novels where it's just, the Harry Bosch type, or the hard luck, gritty, but has eidetic memory and, catches every detail and all, that character comes around a lot because it's a fun character to write, right? And you can put him. And so that's one of the things that I liked about Joe's books, was that it's a very different kind of character than I'd seen in other places. So that's one of the things that is fun, to just have different characters, different archetypes and things to explore.
Right. Yeah, I love doing that in writing, as well, obviously. So, so can you walk us through your narration process? Like, you obviously record, and then you edit all the recordings, and it seems like a long and tedious process. And I'm curious as to how that all works.
Sure. Yeah, I use a process called punch and roll recording, which allows me to record on my computer. And I almost joined this meeting from my audio studio, but it's very small and not very well lit. So I figured it'd be better to be in my office and have the better image. But with punch and roll recording, I can record, and then if I need to stop, or if I make a mistake, I can just roll back and what they call punch in. So I can place my cursor at the end of a sentence that I narrated correctly, hit record, and it'll play back a few seconds so I can hear the last line, and then I kind of just pick up where I left off.
Whoa.
So it is, it comes together smoothly. When you're listening, you should never hear that things are different pieces. But it is a very, not laborious, but it's a meticulous process of putting all these things together. As I've gotten better at narrating, the pieces are bigger, right? The number of punch-ins and corrections and edits gets less. But still, there are days, especially if I'm tired, or just there are just days that it's a struggle, and you just keep pushing one piece at a time. Okay, I got that sentence. Go on to the next sentence. And people say audiobook narration is the marathon of voiceover work. It really is. It's just a process, and you have to be steady and consistent, and that's how you get through it.
Yeah, I tried to narrate one of my own audiobooks for the Crystal Heist, and I was like, once I got it, I'm like, never again. This is not for me. I can't do this. This is way too tedious. I have like the bare minimum of, equipment over here. And so it was like editing, and then I breathe. I breathe so heavily, so much. Like, I had to edit out every single one of my breaths, and I'm like, okay, either I stop breathing or I just don't do this anymore, because I found it very tedious. And I'm like, being a writer, I like, D&D and role playing, and I love, kind of play acting and all that stuff. So there is a desire in me to I love the recording process, but for me, it's the editing that I hate. Like, I like YouTube. I love being on YouTube. I like filming my YouTube videos. I don't like editing them. That's the hard part for me, is the editing process, which I don't like that in books either. So that's, I guess I just don't like editing in general.
Yeah. So do we have more books? I mean, we have some of the short stories that go with, I have Sightless on my calendar.
Yeah. So, basically, I've written the entire series. 7 years of my life was spent writing this series. And, the basically corruption spreading from, one world to another. So the earlier books are jumping around from one world to another. So I'm having different narrators for those books. And then the heroes all come together. I kind of pulled an Avengers before Avengers did it. and stuff. It's just I didn't publish my books, but I did have it done before Avengers did it. And so they all come together for the last few books. And so you'll see Jared and Avarella, like they pop in at the end of Samurai, which is book 3. Anyways,
That's good.
and so I had my narrator for that one, Colleen, she's doing a female because there's 2 female protagonists in that one, and she had to
That's okay.
do Jared's voice and at the end of that one, and it was kind of interesting and stuff. So there's short stories between each one because I felt like we move on and I wanted to show what's kind of going on behind the scenes with the Chosen and stuff. My ultimate desire when the characters all come together is to have each of the original narrators come in and do their character. So like for Jared's,
that'd be fun.
You would be, because you're the voice of Jared. Like I can't undo that, you know. You're also the
Right.
voice of Avarella. But I would have to pay for that because ACX obviously you can only choose one narrator, and so I would have to pay each narrator outright and stuff. So that's kind of like a long-term goal. And again, a Kickstarter is a good idea. It after I get done with these releases, I'm going to try to do the Kickstarter in the fall to like get the money to pay you guys outright, because I feel like I'm missing so many marketing opportunities that I can't do because of ACX's restrictions when you're exclusive to them.
Right.
So it just depends on if I can raise the money or not. And that's definitely something I'm going to do probably for the whole book release, for the ending books as we get, you know, further along. I'm on book 5 right now, and I've got the 13 main books, and then each one has, there's like 10 short stories. I've got a lot of companions. For you in particular, there's a companion to Hunter called Rebels, and it basically goes to everybody, all the other hunters, all the other prisoners, like all their stories. It shows how Zagara was made, when Hinda first became a hunter, when Zagara, like his backstory. It goes into Jared when he was a prisoner, and there's a little short story with Avarella. So it explores all the other characters in that one, and since you're kind of like, you encompass the world of Avarel, that's another one that I was hoping you would do. And then the prequel is Forgotten, but I want to edit that one a lot more before we do that one, because I'm thinking about adding extras, making it longer and adding extra scenes, but I have to wait to be inspired for that first. So that's basically the gist of the projects. And I definitely will hope that you can come back for Jared if I manage to pay all the narrators and get all of the cast. Basically, it's like a full casted. That would be like ultimate dream. If not, I may have to find one narrator that can do all of the Chosen and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
no, that'd be fun to have a duo multicast, for sure. So there's a question I wanted to ask you. In chapter, somewhat in the end, but also in like chapter 2 or 3, when Avarella is telling the story of how her father used to take her out to the stones, right? And you made the connection to, you alluded to that there's a connection to between their world and like Stonehenge and Arthur, right? You made that connection. Is that connection explored further in other books?
No, that was just kind of random, honestly.
Okay.
But yeah, I do connect with Earth, and there's like a whole situation on Earth. Like one of the books is called Immortal, and he was born, the main character in that one was born in 209 BC, and through circumstances in that book he lives until 2016. I think the original date was 2016, but it's 2019 now when I changed it. So he lives until 2019 in modern times, and that's his journals and stuff. And then Raiden finds him at a certain point, and he gets cast into the future on Earth, and aliens take over Earth and completely override everything, and humans become enslaved eventually. And so his other book, that's his first book, is Immortal. His other book is Mortal, where he doesn't remember his past and he's just a human slave to the aliens that are already ruling Earth and stuff. So there's a vague connection, and I think in the back history, and I want to explore that a little more, where Avarel did give the stones, you know, to Earth, and there was a connection there with the Aratul and not wanting Earth to be invaded by the Aratul, and for the Aratul to like not take over that one, because there are portals connecting all the different worlds, and so Earth and Avarel are connected through a portal line, and so there was always a risk of the Aratul trying to spread out and stuff, and so that would be a kind of a fun story to explore, but I haven't done it yet. So
So So I hope you guys really enjoyed this exclusive interview with Timothy. There's going to be a part 2 coming in September, so be watchful for that. So if you really enjoyed this interview, then please give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, writing videos every Wednesday, and writer react videos every Friday. And in the meantime, if you want to support Timothy, if you want to support me and how hard we both worked, me to write the book and him to narrate the book and do all the work to edit it and stuff, then please order Hunter down below. I'll have a link in the description below. You would help us out so much by ordering it, because royalties are split, so he gets a cut, I get a cut. You're going to be supporting us both. It's a great cause. Check it out, link in the description below. And in the meantime, please check out this video where I actually interviewed another author who writes similar books to me, and we had a really great time. It was a really fun interview, so check out that video. It was a blast, and I hope you guys enjoy it.